Hi, my name is Fiolka with the Atchison Planetarium and Cranbrook Institute of Science. Now that we're in early April, thought it would be a good time for us to take a look at some of the bright stars and objects that we can currently see in our Michigan sky. Much of what we're going to talk about you can see with just your eyes, but if you have a small pair of binoculars or a telescope at home, that's great, but you don't really need them. You can just use your eyes. Well, dominating the skies for some time now has been our moon. We had some glorious clear nights the past week, and if you're outside, you certainly got to see the moon really, really spectacular. Well, this coming week on April the 7th at 10:35 p.m., it will be a supermoon. That's the second one of 2020. So we actually get supermoons because the moon's orbit around the Earth is not perfectly circular. It's actually slightly oval. So what that means, sometimes the moon is a bit closer and sometimes it's a bit further away. So when it's at its closest and full, that's when we have a supermoon. But in reality, the difference between closest and furthest moon's distance is only about 30,000 miles. So the furthest distance of the moon from Earth is about 251,000 miles, but on Tuesday, it will be a bit closer at 221,000 miles. So it will appear just a little bit bigger and brighter. The moon's certainly great to look at with any binoculars or telescope. Doesn't matter how long you've been doing astronomy, I find it just draws me in every time I look at it. So a moon map is great to have, and that will help you identify the features. And you can also use our website at www.cranbrook.edu to navigate some great astronomy resources, and one or two of those includes finding maps of the moon that you can use to identify the features you're looking at. Venus, that's also been dominating our skies right now, blazing away in the west. It's actually the third brightest object in Earth's skies after the sun and moon. Bright because it's actually quite close to us for another planet, 60 million miles. And also because, its surface is shrouded in a thick, dense atmosphere that reflects most of the sun's light back into space. When viewed through a telescope, it does appear to look kind of like a mini moon. We might call it a first quarter moon. That's because Venus actually orbits inside of the Earth's orbit, so we see both the side that's facing towards the sun, the daytime side, and you can also see the side facing out into space, the nighttime side. So because we can see both sides at the same time, that's why Venus appears to exhibit phases for the same reason as the moon. It's currently a very pretty sight through a telescope, but the planet is so hostile in reality that you definitely don't want to be going there. In fact, if you try to walk around on the surface, you'd be fried, squashed, poisoned, and asphyxiated all at once. Yes, not a nice place to go to. In the starry sky, high in the northeast, is located the Big Dipper. You can recognize the Big Dipper because these 4 stars you see here mark the bowl, and then these 3 stars coming off mark the handle. The Big Dipper is actually not a constellation. It's really what's known as an asterism. So that means it's a picture within a constellation. The constellation that we call Ursa Major, the Great Bear. The Big Dipper is quite well known because you can use these 2 front stars you see right here to find the North Star. Its real name is Polaris, but we sure love nicknames, and they just help us remember things, so we usually call that star by its nickname, the North Star. Can be hard to find, but you can use the Big Dipper to help you. Take these 2 front stars and draw a straight line through them, and if you keep going like this with that straight line, the first star you come to will be the North Star. Sometimes I like to think of the handle stars as like a big arrow in the sky, pointing the way for you to go from those 2 stars to find this North Star. The Earth's North Pole almost points straight at it, and that's the reason why it just seems to stay put as the Earth rotates. The Earth's North Star is actually part of the smaller Little Dipper. This is another one of those asterisms or pictures, but this time it's in the constellation of Ursa Minor, the Little Bear. I find that you do need pretty dark skies to see all of the stars of Little Dipper, but the North Star is bright enough that you can see it from urban skies. The Big Dipper is also very useful to find a whole host of other stars and constellations, not just the North Star. In fact, if you follow the pointer stars and go the opposite way from what you did to find the North Star, well, that's a good way for you to find Leo the lion. Leo is actually one of the 12, some like to say 13, in fact, constellations of the zodiac. It's one of the oldest constellations in the sky, and many cultures around the world and throughout the ages imagine this as a lion. You can recognize Leo because you'll see what looks like a back-to-front question mark. This is called the sickle, and actually marks the head and mane of this lion. And at the base of the question mark is a bright star that we call Regulus. This is a Latin name meaning little king. When you look at this star, you're really seeing it as it appeared in 1941. That's because it's actually 79 light years away. So, if you want to see what it looks like tonight, well, you're going to have to wait until the year 2099. It's amazing because it takes light 79 years to make that trip from this star traveling at 186,000 miles a second to reach our eyes. Behind the sickle, there's actually 2 stars you see here. Those are marking the body. And then this one at the back, that's marking the tail. The tail star's name is Danabola, which in English literally does mean the tail of the lion. So, star names really do kind of make sense when you translate them into English. Just to the east of this star Danabola, there's a small patch of stars. This actually used to be the little tuft of fur at the end of the lion's tail, but was actually separated off in the 16th century to form part of a separate constellation known as Coma Berenices, or Berenice's hair. This patch of stars is called Male 111, and it's actually 290 light years away, so it's one of the nearest star clusters to the Earth. If you've got binoculars, and send you a small telescope, take a sweep through it. It's actually very pretty. And then to the west of the sickle and Regulus, look for 2 bright stars. They are Castor and Pollux, and the 2 main stars of Gemini, the twins. One of the last winter constellations, in fact, to disappear from view in the evening. Halfway between Gemini and Regulus is Cancer the crab, another zodiacal constellation. It's actually a bit faint, but if you live in dark skies, you may just be able to see a little fuzzy patch of light. This is actually a beautiful cluster of stars called the Beehive. Take a look through binoculars or a small telescope, and here's a photo that was taken with our Cranbrook Observatory showing you how spectacular this is. It's actually about 1,000 stars in this cluster, and it's just about 600 light years away, so quite far. Let's go back to the Big Dipper. Now, if you take a look at those handle stars and follow the curve down and towards the east, you'll come to a really bright star dominating the eastern sky. It's actually called Arcturus and is the 4th brightest star, so it's really very, very bright. A good way to remember how to find it and also what it's called is to say to yourself, draw an arc to Arcturus. It's only 37 light years away, and so it's actually one of the closest stars to Earth. It's also a red giant star getting towards the end of its life and is actually so large you could fit 17,500 suns inside. We also know that all stars move, including the sun, so this star is moving quite fast relative to Earth because it's moving at a right angle to us, and because it's quite close, 37 light years away, it actually moves the equivalent distance of half of your little finger when held at arm's length to the sky every 100 years. Arcturus is the main star in the constellation of Boötes, the herdsman. It's very hard to make out an actual person in these stars, so if you imagine this wedge-shaped constellation to look either like a kite or perhaps an ice cream cone, or if you're a Star Wars fan like me, then you'll see a star destroyer right there. Not too far away from Arcturus in our sky is a giant cluster of stars called a Globular Cluster. It has a designation of M3 and consists of an astonishing 500,000 stars. Can't be seen with your eyes, but looks like a tiny fuzzball in binoculars and small telescopes. Here's a photo that was taken with our Cranbrook Observatory and really reveals the spectacular nature of this amazing object. It's so far away on the outer fringes of our Milky Way that you're already seeing it as it looked 34,000 years ago. So, some great objects and star clusters and constellations to take a look at in our current Michigan sky.